we could have let other people into this group that didn't have a beard. You know, I mean, that's the whole thing. I mean,
well,
I don't know why you were so adamant
it's a special
about
privileged group.
Well, I know, but I mean, you know, just because Ansel Adams had a beard doesn't mean that we think every photographer has to have. Oh, you're on.
Thanks, Ron. Appreciate your previous talk on your Polaroid work. My name is Mike Stroup, for those of you who are not familiar. I wanted to talk just a little bit about the blog that I've been doing. For those of you who do know me, blogging is new to me. I appreciate Ron for introducing me to that. What I decided to do, as you've seen, is to deal with and talk about the relatively small town that I grew up in, and like many towns around the country, over the past 20 to 40 years have been in a gradual state of decline. As you've seen in the blog, I've talked about how the downtown area of this small town, the town has kept a pretty constant population of about 8,000 people. And over the number of years in the 60s and early 70s, primarily for this small town, the new mall in Muncie, Indiana, that came about at that time, it was very easy for people to drive a few miles and save a few dollars. And as I indicated in the latest blog, I don't think we realized at the time that it was going to gradually destroy those small town businesses, even though some of them may have had very popular and familiar names such as Sears, Montgomery Ward's, J.C. Penney's. They just weren't able to sustain the amount of business over the years to keep them in business, and they gradually went out of business. And as I say, while this has been somewhat of a personal journey for myself, I've tried to relate some of the personal situations of growing up in a small town, but I've tried to include some of the more universal aspects of these small businesses and the small towns all over the country, gradually in decline and losing many of those businesses. And I moved away from the town when I graduated from college, and did not return to live. But the times that I have revisited, for whatever reason, it's been kind of saddened me to go back and see how this town has declined. And as I say, it's probably just a transition that many small cities and small towns across the country have been in for many years, and it's only probably just a natural progression that has happened to the small town in our country. Life changed in the last 20 or 30 or 40 years as it did in the 40 years preceding that period of time when there were changes. Certainly the Great American Mall, I think, had a lot to do with it. The rise of Walmart certainly has had an effect on many of the small towns in the country. But that's what I've tried to deal with this blog, is to present some personal items that have taken place or that I dealt with and went through growing up in the small town, and also just dealing with this town and city as it changed and evolved, frankly, into something less than what it's been in the last 20 to 30 to 40 years. And I will continue with the blog. If you happen to read the blog, see the images, and you have any comments that you would like to make, please post some comments, or my email address is Stroup, S-T-R-O-U-P, at Comcast.net. Would appreciate any comments or thoughts that you might have, or if you have any similar stories to relate where you may have grown up, I would certainly appreciate it.
Mike, I got a quick question.
Yes.
You know, it's interesting you talk about the decline of Hartford City as a pretty typical middle American example of decline of a smaller community. It's happening all over the country, but I mean, that area has always been known as very typical. And what I found happening on Facebook is, and I know people always use Facebook, but what I'm noticing more and more on Facebook is people from my past, the high school days, all reconnecting. A lot of my old high school friends I continue to reconnect with on Facebook. And I wonder if there is a sense of the loss of community has really affected the American psyche, because we've lost so many of these small communities where we would see each other, we would stop and talk when we were on our way to the Sears, you know, in the small town. We were on our way to the grocer or to the drugstore, you know, or you know, small bowling leagues that were sponsored by all these small town entities. And I just wonder, when I see, you know, all these people from high school, you know, because you go back to '76, which is the year I graduated, you know, a lot of those small towns were still thriving. And I just wonder, when people are trying to reconnect back to their past, I just wonder if the loss of sense of community is really affecting our American psyche and making us less personal and less community oriented. And I don't know. I don't know if you have any thoughts on what you saw and what you felt through this project as far as that aspect of it goes.
Well, I've always felt that some of the changes that were brought about, and all across the country, and certainly the great American suburb started many years ago. But I think a lot of times people have their I know for myself, the friends that I have are really not from the old school. I really don't see any of those people anymore. And I have friends, but they don't live in the same neighborhood. You know, we connect up with people in some other fashion, and they live elsewhere in the city where I live, but not necessarily from the old hometown. I don't know if that relates very much with what you're indicating. Or,
no, it does. It's just,
yeah.
It's just you know, the sense of community was always so strong in those things, and there was a strength that we could all grab onto, that it just seems like that's more and more fleeting, and things become more and more impersonal when we live in these larger cities and the suburbs. What, 76% of Americans live in suburbs now. I think that's the last number I've seen. You know, and it's just one of those things. The small town, when I see those small towns declining, you know, I have that feeling. And when I look at your pictures, I have that feeling of loss, and a loss of sense of community.
I think that's the case.
Okay. Anything else? Hey, we can end this one just like you. Do you have anything, just like the last video? Do you have anything else that you'd like to say?
No, I think.
Okay, well, I guess we'll say goodbye to the folks, and we'll see them next time.
Thank you.